Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you might be in the world. Thank you so much for joining me here today and for joining all of us. This is the GMAT Club MBA Spotlight. We are so excited to be bringing you direct information from admissions officers from some of the world's top business schools. We literally have over 10,000 people registered. So this is going to be a great opportunity for all of you to learn and hear directly from admissions officers what is happening in this crazy season that we are in the middle of. Just to introduce myself, I'm Maria Wich-Vila. I'm a 2005 graduate of Harvard Business School, and I'm the founder of ApplicantLab.com, which is a social enterprise that is trying to level the admissions playing field by providing affordable yet excellent admissions advice. And with that out of the way, I'm going to hand this over to Evan and Katie from HBS to introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. So happy to be with you here today to talk more about the MBA program at Harvard Business School. My name is Evan Sherwood, and I work on the outreach team here in our admissions office. And I am joined today by my colleague, Katie. I'll let her introduce herself as well.
Hi, my name is Katie Kelsall. I also work in admissions and financial aid, heavily on the financial aid side. So I will be here to answer your questions about financial aid.
Awesome. So with that said, we'll jump right in. We want to make sure that we have as much time as possible to answer your questions, because that's what's most important to us today, as well as providing some just top of mind overview of our program. So we'll go ahead and get started. We at HBS have been around for over 100 years, and we're the first MBA program. And many things have changed over those 100 years, but one thing has remained the same, and that is our mission statement, and that is we educate leaders who make a difference in the world. This mantra really underlies everything that we do at HBS, from how we pick our curriculum to how we select our students, and to even how our alums are out in the world choosing their jobs and how they're making an impact. The world desperately needs more leaders to address its most urgent and challenging problems, and virtually none of these problems can be addressed without business leaders playing a vital role. And our graduates are located all over the world using their HBS MBA education to follow their passion and make the impact in the area that is of most importance to them. We'll go to our next slide. Just to give you kind of an overview of how our curriculum is structured. It is a 2-year general management full-time MBA. We find the general management perspective to be so important because we do realize that no business decision is ever made in a silo. And we really want you to have a broad understanding of all elements of an organization when you come to HBS. So in that first year, your required curriculum year, as it's called, you'll take 11 foundational courses in general management. In the second year, your elective curriculum year, you'll have your choice of choosing from over 100 elective courses. The great thing about the second year is that you get to choose whatever you want, whether that be a course at HBS, you can cross-register at other Harvard graduate schools, at MIT or Tufts, and you can even choose from independent projects. So your second year is really yours to make, which is really nice, being that in the first year, you're taking all of your required courses. Over the course of your 2 years, you engage in many type of learning styles. There's the case method, simulations, and small group meetings. Majority of your cases and classes will be taught in the case method, which we pioneered at HBS. The case method is a great way for you to step into the role of the protagonist in class and ask yourself the question of what would you do given this limited set of information about a business problem. And so we really liked the case method. It's a very highly participatory and interactive immersive learning environment for our students. And you'll find once you graduate from HBS that we often say that HBS is a commitment not just for 2 years, but for a life, and that you're thrown into an alumni network of over 80,000 alumni from nearly 173 different countries around the world. And so wherever your career may take you, you'll always have HBS by your side, helping you along the way, and always finding a network to lean on as you navigate your career. We'll go to the next slide. Awesome. So things I want to highlight here, what really makes HBS so impactful for our students is really the broad diversity they are exposed to when they come to campus. In a typical year, we have about 938 students in the class that are ranging from 71 different countries and close to 300 different universities. And so we're truly picking and selecting students from all over the world to come sit in our classroom. And not only do we see the diversity in our, we also see it in our curriculum as well. HBS uses 15 different global research centers and offices to write and conduct new casework. And over half of the new cases produced last year were global in nature. And they're doing this, again, like I said, we're from our alumni who are based in 173 different countries, which gives us a lot of different locales and industries to work with across the world. Something that we've seen grown out of HBS over the last few years is this really call for being involved in entrepreneurial related activities. And a recent survey at a 15-year reunion found that over half of our alums are involved in the founding of our company, which is really important to see as HBS as an incubator for entrepreneurship. When students come to HBS, they're often looking to pivot careers. And so we see with the use of over 50 plus career coaches, close to 65% of our students are using HBS to change a career path. And so those career coaches are well versed in showing our students how to navigate a career switch and helping you do that. When you come to HBS, a critical part of that diverse experience you'll get to enjoy is that we break you up into 10 different sections in your first year. And they're lettered A through J. And each section is composed as an overall microcosm of the overall composition of the class in terms of diversity. And so these sections are built with 18 different factors that are put into an algorithm and sorts these all 938 students into 10 different sections, and becomes this great way to really situate and spread out all of our students through these rich-based sections of diversity. HBS is one of the few business schools in the world that has a residential campus. And so you'll see that 65% of our students do live on campus, which creates a great immersive learning environment for them to be a part of. We do have on-campus dorms and apartments for our students to choose from if they choose to live on campus. When you come to campus as a student, there are a plethora of student clubs to get involved with over 95. There's a club for nearly everything here at HBS, which we're super proud of. And if there isn't a club that you want to be a part of, then you can make it. And so really empower our students to take a active and role outside the classroom as well. And there are also over 200 leadership positions for our students to choose from, which is something really great as we do really value leadership on our campus and an evaluation process. This continues through the student experience as well, as students can take on multiple leadership positions over the course of their 2 years. Let me go to the next slide. So I want to take a quick moment to go over the things that we look for when we look over our candidates. And the first thing we'll look at is the habit of leadership. Leadership can take many contexts, and that can happen in school or work, military service, community efforts. And for us, it's not important where you demonstrated leadership, but how you did it. There's not one type of leader who fits here at HBS. We deliberately create a class that includes different kinds of leaders, from that frontline commander to the thought leader who works behind the scene. The second thing we look for is analytical aptitude and appetite. There will be plenty of numbers and data that will guide making reasoned and intelligent decisions while at HBS. We want people who are able to do this type of work and like doing it. The classroom is demanding, fast-paced, and a highly verbal environment. And so we look for students who are intellectually engaged and have innate intellectual curiosity. We want people who thrive on challenging ideas and can actively contribute to group discussions in the classroom. And finally, we're looking for engaged community citizens. We're looking for people who are engaged in the world around them and will be engaged as students at HBS. We want people with a pattern of engaging in their community, however they define it, whether at a job, at school, or in an extracurricular activity. There's a very strong sense of community at HBS, and we want people who invest just as much in their own learning as much as they do others' learning. So this slide goes over the admissions process. And so the first step in the admissions process is the written application. And here you'll see listed out the components of the written application that include your resume, your academic transcripts, your GMAT or your GRE score. And then we always get a lot of questions about whether we prefer the GMAT or the GRE. It's completely up to you. Whichever test you feel the most comfortable with, please take that test and submit that score to us. If your undergraduate degree was not taught in English, you'll need to take an English language test, and those options are listed there. You'll list to us your awards and your accomplishments. We have one essay question that we'll have you answer, and then we'll have you submit 2 letters of recommendation. Letters of recommendation, we prefer one to be a supervisor that you currently have or have had in the past. If you can help it, it's not a requirement, but we like to get that perspective if we can. And the second one is completely up to you on how you want to best strategize your application. The second step in the process and the goal of the written application is to get invited to the interview. And the interview is by invitation only. This is a 30-minute interview conducted by our admissions board member. And these will be based on campus or in select cities around the world. One note, this year, all of our interviews are being conducted virtually due to the ongoing pandemic. And so this year will be a little different, but once we get back into our normal year, you will have the option of conducting your interview in person, on campus, in a select city around the world, or via Zoom. And the last step of the process is a post-interview reflection. This is due 24 hours after your interview. And this is really just your way to get the last word to us. We know there are some things that come up in the interview that you were wanting to say but didn't have the opportunity to do so. And this is a chance for you to do that. This isn't meant to be another essay in the process. This is really just a space to capture your candid thoughts. And so this is meant to be just top of mind right after the interview. What else would you like us to know? So our joint degrees, we're lucky that HBS partners with multiple other units across Harvard to offer a great variety of joint degrees. The great thing about our joint degree programs is that you can complete two degrees time than you did if you did them separately. And so you see here a list of options. Each program has a different structure to it. Just know that whichever program you are in with a joint degree, you will take the required curriculum at HBS 1 year, and then your elective curriculum year will be the year that is kind of changed and based off which other joint degree that you are pursuing. But all those details can be found on our website, so I just point you to our website to look at the details and specifics of those particular programs. And then finally, our application dates for this year. Round 1 has already passed. It was last month. Round 2 is coming up January 5th of 2021. And then our 2+2 deferred admissions program for those that are in college or graduating college will be due on April 29th of 2021. We will not start reviewing applications until the deadline is not a rolling admissions process. So just do keep that in mind as well. And now I will turn.
Hello, everyone. So again, my name is Katie, and I work in the Admissions and Financial Aid Office. And I just want to give a broad overview of our financial aid program, and we'll have plenty of time for questions as well after this. But I wanted to start by talking a little bit about our philosophy in financial aid, which is to ensure the learning environment includes diverse perspectives. Now, that really aligns with the mission of the school. We want to bring in candidates from all different types of backgrounds. And that's very essential to making that case method work in the classroom. Like Evan talked about, it really requires diverse perspectives to engage with each other. So we have a need-based financial aid policy program, meaning other schools may have merit-based aid. Our financial aid is solely based on financial need. And this really allows us to let all of our students, no matter what their financial background is, come in and participate in the program. I'll talk a little bit more about what that need-based aid looks like, but I did want to mention also that our financial aid is available to both international and domestic candidates. It's very important to understand. There's no difference between eligibility. So regardless of whether or not you're a US citizen, you would still be eligible for the same types of need-based aid. So we have financial aid kind of available to you throughout your MBA journey, and that includes while you're in school, but also after graduation. So to start, I'll talk a little bit about our tuition assistance, which are need-based scholarships. This is what you would apply for after you've been admitted to the program, but before you matriculate. And this is tuition assistance, so it's financial aid that goes directly towards your cost for school. In addition to our need-based scholarships, we do have other financial aid support. If you are part of the military, you could qualify for VA benefits. We also have complementary fellowships. So those are fellowships that you can receive on top of our need-based scholarships. And they're for students who come from, different types of backgrounds. For instance, we have the Goldsmith Fellowship for students coming from the nonprofit sector. We have the Kaplan, which is for students coming from life sciences. And then there's a few others that are not listed on this slide, but one I also wanted to highlight is the Forward Fellowship. And that is for students who are kind of the breadwinner of their family, so to speak. They may be providing financial support to parents or siblings. And we know that, coming back to school, it can significantly impact that. So for students in that situation, they can apply for the Forward Fellowship on top of our need-based aid. And then secondly, between your first and second year, you have the opportunity to do a summer fellowship, which is a paid internship essentially. And it really allows students to kind of explore any type of field or position they might want to work in and make some money while doing so. So we have summer fellowships pretty much for anything you would like to do, but specifically we have some from the Rock Center for Entrepreneurship. So if you're interested in starting working on a startup, over the summer, you can get funding to do so. We have the Social Enterprise Initiative, which gives summer fellowships to students who want to work in social enterprise or nonprofit. But if your job doesn't fit into one of those categories, there's still opportunities for you to take advantage of the summer fellowship. And then lastly, we have what we call career support and exploration funds. And these are funds, I like to call them kind of postgraduate funds or funds that you can receive at the end of your MBA program. So these funds are designed for you to be able to explore a career after graduation that might not make the typical HBS MBA salary. We want to make sure our students have the opportunity to do whatever they want to do after graduation and not let that get in the way. So we have the Leadership Fellows Program, which provides salary support for you to work in a nonprofit. And then we have some loan assistance programs, which, will help repay your loans that you borrowed for MBA if you're working in social enterprise, if you're part of the Rock Center, so if you're doing entrepreneurship, or if you're in the private sector. So these are some funds to help you minimize your debt after graduation, and then explore any kind of career that you might want to pursue. And lastly, just to highlight again, our need-based scholarship amount, which I know most of you are probably interested in. The average amount our students receive per academic year is $42,000, so a total of $84,000 for the 2 years. That is the average that we see, but there is a large range between $30,000 and $70,000 is the typical range. And that being said, your scholarship amount really depends on your individual financial circumstances. So as I said, once you are admitted to the MBA program, you would apply for financial aid. And at that time, we would determine what you are eligible for. Another thing I want to highlight is, we don't offer full rides at HBS. We do expect all of our students to contribute financially in some way. So none of our scholarships cover the full amount. So often our students pay the difference between using student loans or savings or a combination of the two. But what I feel really strongly and proud about is that we have a really wonderful starting salary and median signing bonus for our graduating students. The average salary starting is around $150,000 plus that bonus that you see on the screen. And given those salary figures and bonus numbers, our students are really able to pay down their MBA debt very quickly. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, we have support to help you pay down debt. But in addition to that, what you end up earning after graduation is significant enough for that debt to not really be an issue. And our alumni have shared that sentiment as well. So that was a pretty quick overview of both our admissions process and financial aid, but we're happy to take any of the questions that you might have.
Okay, so thank you guys so much for that awesome overview. I am now going to pick a bunch of questions that we have been getting from the audience. In some cases, I am smushing similar questions together just for the sake of saving time. So our first batch of questions is really going to focus around what's the current admissions scenario that you guys are seeing. It is a very uncommon year due to COVID. And so one of the first questions we've got is, have you seen an increase in applications this year? I don't expect you guys to give an actual exact number, but if you could give us directionally some sort of sense of how many more applications are you seeing this year, if any, so far?
Yeah, Katie, I'll take this one.
Yeah.
So the way our admissions numbers typically run is that it's countercyclical to how the economy is doing. So when the economy sees a downturn, we typically see an uptick in applications, and we've definitely seen an uptick in applications this year. And I know I've seen a lot of questions in the chat as well, so I'll just take this time to preemptively talk about, I know there's some concern over how the deferrals that we gave out last year affecting the number of people who can be admitted in this round. And right now we have petitioned the university to essentially allow us to take in more students than in a typical year. And we're still waiting for the answer for that. So we're hoping to take a larger class than usual so it doesn't hurt anyone applying this year. And then essentially the deferrals will just be added in to next year's class. But that has not been approved yet. And so we're waiting to hear back. And once we do hear back about that, we will let that be known on our website. So just keep checking our website for more information about that as we learn more.
All right, excellent. Thank you. Okay, so the question is, do different types of students tend to apply in different rounds? Do overrepresented groups usually apply in round one? And I think what's behind this question is there's this rumor out there that like, oh, if you work in management consulting or investment banking, or if you're an Indian engineer, if you're one of these hyper competitive groups, get that application in round one because the seats will all be taken by round two. So if you could talk about that, that would be great.
Yeah. Katie, you want me to take this or do you want to take it?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we actually see the rounds end up, I know there's that rumor definitely circulating around that likes to go from year to year, but we really do see across the board fairly even backgrounds across both rounds. So it truly doesn't matter which round you apply in, whichever round you feel the most ready and comfortable with. We ask that you submit in that round, and your background will not have an impact on your likelihood of getting in a particular round.
So we're still going to stay on the rounds. We've got another question. Can you share what percentage of the class is accepted in round one? Is it 50% round one, 50% round two, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we really strive for about 50-50 in each round in a given year. So that's typically what we aim for, give or take that number. But yes, like okay. An even split if we can help it.
That's great, because I think I saw some concern in the chat about, are all the seats already taken? Am I too late? So it's great to hear that.
Yeah, I would just jump in to just add to that. But this is a question we get all the time about whether or not to apply in round one or round two. And I think Evan mentioned it, but I would just reiterate is you should apply when you feel most ready to apply. That's the most important part. So I would worry less about the percentages and, that piece of it. If you're not ready to apply, don't rush to apply for round one, wait for round two. Or if you're ready to apply right now, we said that round one has passed, you're more than welcome. We would encourage you to apply for round two.
Also something too, Katie, do you want to talk about how financial aid works and how? Yeah.
That's a great question too. Yeah. So I mentioned in the presentation that you apply for financial aid after you've been admitted. So it does not matter if you apply in round one or round two. It doesn't really matter when you apply for financial aid as long as you meet the final deadline, which is not until June 1st. So we don't run out of aid, so to speak. If you're eligible for financial aid, you would receive financial aid.
Great. That's a great point, because I know that it's an important factor for a lot of people. For the relatively new Masters of Engineering, Masters of Biotech that you guys are offering, can someone apply to both at the same time? And does applying to one of these additional joint, I think this probably applies to all of the joint degree programs. Does it add a higher level of scrutiny in terms of, wow, this person's trying to get into our MBA program and our master's program? Like, whew, they better be smart. Like, or are they assessed individually?
Yeah. So for all of our joint degrees, you actually apply to both schools independently, and then each school reviews your application and gives you independent decisions when you apply. And so, for instance, I'll just take the law school as an example. You apply to HBS and you apply to Harvard Law School, and each committee would act independently of each other. And then if you receive acceptance from both schools, then you're then entered into the joint degree program and would work with our staff who focuses on joint degrees to go through the necessary steps. So we will know, you will indicate that you're applying to another degree program for a joint degree, but that does not invite a higher level of scrutiny, because we are essentially just evaluating you on the terms of as though you're applying to HBS. And so it is just a general knowledge that we will know, but does not increase the level of scrutiny placed upon you from the committee.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't know if you mentioned this, Evan, but if you are admitted to one school and not both, you can still choose to go and just get one degree. It doesn't eliminate you from both schools.
Okay. So the application doesn't have, like, for that Master's of Engineering, as like a separate essay of like, what do you hope to get from both programs?
Yeah, so there are, so with the, in terms of the engineering specific ones, there is an additional essay question that, has you, and it also asks for an additional letter of recommendation. So someone can talk to your technical background. That's in particular for the engineering. I don't want to get too in the weeds on this particular one, but I will just say, if you go to their website and look at the joint degree programs, each degree will talk about the steps of applying. And if there are additional, because they're like the engineering programs do have additional letter of recommendation if you're invited to interview, and an additional essay question as well, that's specific to those programs. But again, those don't invite a higher level of scrutiny. It's just really there to make sure that you're meeting the background requirements needed for those programs.
All right, excellent, thank you. Okay, what are the outliers of age and experience, especially for admissions? So I think I want to focus more on the older candidates, because I think younger candidates, if you're still in college, there's the 2+2 program. So I think a lot of the concern is around older candidates. And then actually in terms of younger candidates, if you are 1 year out or 2 years out, and maybe you didn't apply for 2+2, but you are sort of a high potential, very young candidate, can you talk about sort of those extremes on either end to give folks a sense of how old is too old or how young is too young?
Yeah. Katie, do you want me to take this, or do you want to take this one?
I guess I would just say, I'll probably defer to you, Evan, for more, but we don't have, an age criteria. Typically, our students have about 5 years of work experience, so we kind of think of it more as work experience. I think, again, similar to the rounds, I would recommend to apply when you feel ready for an MBA and when that seems like the right next step for you. If you're so advanced in your career, maybe that's not the right next step. But in terms of just your age, that's not something that we consider or penalize for.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the only thing I'll add to that is just that we do, by the time you matriculate into HBS, we do require that every 2 years of full-time job experience. Right. But beyond that, like Katie said, we see people all over the map, and the average amount of work experience is 5 years. So we look at it that way. But I will say too that older candidates always ask about, should I get an MBA or should I go into we have some exec ed programming at HBS that people always look to. And so I think once you get into the 10+ years of job experience, you become a better fit for our executive education programs. And there's a bunch of different tracks within executive education that you can pursue. None of those will grant an MBA degree. They will grant different certificates, but that's generally kind of how we look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, excellent. And as I tend to tell people who are on the older side, like, think about it. First of all, do you really want to be surrounded by classmates who are maybe 10 years younger than you are, have a lot less experience than you, have different social goals, have different professional goals? Like, really think about, even if you do get in, think about whether or not that's the right experience that will really accelerate your career in the way that you want it to. So a similar question related to 2+2, if somebody is currently a senior in college, oh, this is not about 2 + 2, I apologize. But if somebody is currently a senior in college and they're looking to apply in a few years, does where they work have any impact on whether or not they are admitted? So it looks like this particular person is talking about government versus consulting, but I'm sure it applies to any combination out there.
Yeah. So it does affect you in this terms of you are evaluated against people coming from the same industry as you. And so obviously government and consulting are different industries. And so you'll be evaluated in different pools. And so your most direct competition is always the people applying from the same industry as you. So yeah, there are going to be different backgrounds coming from each of those pools and industries. And we never know how strong that pool is going to be in a given year. But you would expect to see different results. And for example, in government versus consulting, just because they're such different backgrounds.
Yeah, and that being said, again, to what Evan was talking about earlier, we're trying to build a class of diverse perspectives, so not heavily on one side or from one sector. So that's just something to keep in mind. We want people from all different sectors and backgrounds.
Okay, so the age of COVID has led to a lot of people, unfortunately, losing their jobs or becoming underemployed. So can you talk about how do you view unemployment, I think, in general, when somebody applies and they're either unemployed at the time of applying or they have had periods of unemployment? And I think this is especially relevant now because I think a lot of people are losing their jobs. So if you could comment on that, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are an office that has empathy and are sympathetic. We understand what's going on right now in the world. And so we'll not penalize you if you've been laid off, furloughed, or whatever the circumstances may be. We will judge you and evaluate your application based on what you've submitted to us with your previous work experience, and will not hold any type of unemployment against you. And so I wouldn't be fearful of that holding you back in our application process. And I would just say too that we've seen a lot of people reach out to us about ways that they're trying to take on and learn new skills and while they're unemployed or something like that. So maybe that can speak to something that you're working on and shows a great initiative on your part. That's also never a bad thing as well. But just know that you won't be penalized for anything that happens as a result of unemployment or a furlough.
And I'll just add to that from a financial aid perspective, we are, very sensitive to the needs of our students, in general, but also currently. And we're always working with students and staff and faculty to kind of introduce more and more financial aid programs to help assist students, and even temporary financial aid programs for, specific times. For example, during COVID, we're trying to offer, more financial assistance. So that being said, we don't want financing to get in the way either of you pursuing your MBA. So, not only from an admissions perspective, but we're working really hard in financial aid to increase funding opportunities for students who are, less employed or have lost their jobs, et cetera.
Yeah, and one of the things I like to tell people is, remember, HBS looks for a habit of leadership, and you don't need to be employed to show leadership, right? So as long as you're demonstrating some level of initiative and leadership wherever you are, and not just sitting around watching Netflix and eating Ben and Jerry's, which there's nothing wrong with that. We all need it at times, but as long as you've been being productive with your time, I think that helps a lot. And I will also say, I'm sure I'm going to get this question a lot today, but there was actually an admissions officer from another top school who said that she had been laid off in the 2001 downturn. So don't worry about it. Like, some of the admissions officers evaluating you, they themselves may have been laid off at some point in their life. So there really is a lot of empathy there for their side. Okay, if you are an entrepreneur and you've never had a boss, you don't really have suppliers or customers because you have a staff who does that for you, what kind of letter of recommendation would work?
Yeah, this is the great kind of exception to the rule that we've come across. And something that we always say here is, again, that's okay. And so it's ultimately, we don't have any type of specifications on who we need to have your recommenders be. So it's really up to you who you think fits the best in your strategy to best present your story to the missions board. And so this could be someone that you've worked alongside with, previously. I mean, it's really anyone in your life who you feel could really speak to at this point, since you don't have those traditional working relationships that we would tell others to turn to. And so whoever you think best can speak to you, and all the questions that we ask our recommenders are on the website as well. So those are public facing already, so you can see that. Whoever you think best can answer those questions is who we would recommend you reaching out to write your letter of recommendation. And a question I always get to is, can I go far back as professors from my undergraduate university? And we say, absolutely, if that's something that you wish to do, and you feel they can write a really strong and compelling case about you and really give specific detailed feedback on you, then great. Never settle for someone who has like a good name or a good title. Really want people who can give that really nuanced input on you and has a good relationship with you.
I think the note, you mentioned what those questions are. So for people who may not be familiar with it, it's basically 2 mini essays that the recommendation writer has to write. And so one of them is, how does this person, I'm paraphrasing here, but how does this person compare against their peers? What sort of impact have they had on their organization? And then the second one is, talk about a time you gave the candidate feedback, presumably negative feedback, and how they replied, how they responded to that feedback. And so one thing I would say is that one of the issues that I think is an issue for professors is that they haven't seen you. They might say like, oh, she's really good at research. Boy, oh boy, this algorithm that she developed for my class was excellent. But that doesn't necessarily give me a huge insight into who you are as a person. So when you're thinking about who's going to be your recommender, keep in mind what questions they're being asked, and then see if you can use that to reverse engineer, like, who has a good story about a time they gave me feedback, right? And you might be surprised at how many people actually can write a recommendation for you. Okay, from an industry standpoint, what is the culture around tech in terms of the offerings for entrepreneurship? So is it more focused on the VC investment side? Is it more focused on the here's how you build and launch a product side? Is it a little of both? And I know that HBS has really been investing heavily in recent years into expanding, this, the iLab? What's that other build? That didn't exist when I was there. So there's all this great stuff that has launched since I left. But so, yeah, would you say it balances more towards VC versus building products, or is it both?
Well, I was actually just going to mention the iLab while you were asking that question, because that's for those who don't know, we have the Harvard Innovation Lab right on campus at HBS, and it's a Harvard-wide initiative. So people from students and faculty and staff actually from all across the university can use the Innovation Lab. And that's a really great way to it's a really great resource for our entrepreneurs, but also a way to tap into, the expertise of people from across the university, including from SEAS, the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences. There's a wide array of people involved, so that you can really focus on, if you want to focus on tech, that's definitely an opportunity.
All right, excellent. Sorry, I thought you were going to say something.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Okay. So what is the value of international experience in the application? Is sort of like expected that most people have some, or not really? How is that evaluated?
Yeah. So it's definitely not expected, for every applicant to have international experience. I think that it's great if you have it, and it's definitely a plus, but by no means necessary. And we know that everyone, I also question that kind of plays in the same vein as, are international students viewed as the same as domestic students? And the answer to that question is yes. It always frequently comes up. It's all valued the same. But I mean, for someone to have international work experience, again, it's just something else about them. Again, we use a very holistic review process when looking over applications. And so that's just one more fact and data point about you that you're bringing to the table. And how you've chosen to talk about that is completely up to you. But it's not going to hurt or overly help you in any one particular situation.
Yeah, I would just add to that, once you're enrolled in the MBA program, we do think of the global experience as being very important. So there's plenty of opportunities to get international experience. And some of those are required opportunities while you're here.
All right, excellent. So jumping back to another admissions question, how can I overcome a low GPA? in the admissions process?
Yeah, so great question, and something that I just mentioned too. So this is a way into just that holistic review process that I just mentioned, and knowing that no one data point in your application will ever, eliminate you. There's no minimum GPA. There are no minimum test scores in our process. We know that, there are all kinds of academic backgrounds, and your academic trajectory at a college or university can definitely have bumps and bruises and a tumultuous, 4 years, and that's okay. That doesn't define who you are, and knowing that you can turn to your work experience or your letters of recommendation to help fill in those gaps or explain certain things. I mean, I think we look much more at your application in whole, and looking at how are you trending as a whole when we look in regards to your application, and not just this one particular data point. And I think too that I always said that you can really help. This is where your letters of recommendation can really come in, because your letters of recommendation are the only voices in the application that's not yours, and so it's the one chance to hear from outside sources about who you are. And if someone can speak to how you overcame that, or how you want to rectify that, I think that's a great opportunity, just as an example. But I really think that if you do have a low GPA, then we're definitely going to be looking more at the other parts of your application to see kind of you and overall aggregate as a candidate.
Yeah, and I just add that we do publish our class profile on the website, and so you can definitely see the ranges of age and GPA and test scores, which I know a lot of you are asking about, but I would just encourage you not to obsess over that class profile, or, it's a guide there for you to get a sense of what we have in the class, but don't let it, make you feel like you're not eligible or you won't be considered because you're not in that range. As Evan said, it's really important for us to reiterate that it is a holistic view. So I don't want people to feel too discouraged by the class profiles.
Thank you. So we've got a lot of people from India joining us here right now, and I see this quite a bit. I think it's common in India for some people to get something called like a postgraduate diploma or something in business. It tends to be like a 1-year program, and I think they get it sort of maybe a year or two after graduating. I think it's my impression is that it's sort of the equivalent of a master's in management. So if somebody already has one of these PGPs, or let's say a 1-year master's in management, and then several years later they want to apply to HBS, is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? How does that play into the admissions decision?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're looking for in all of our candidates, but in this is, a clear and articulate, story of why HBS and why now, and how HBS fits into whatever path that you're on. I think if you can paint a clear picture of that, then no matter what you have, credential-wise or background-wise, work experience-wise, that'll make your case stronger to our admissions committee. And so I just encourage applicants to think about that as they look to apply, really articulating why HBS, why now? Like in this particular situation, I think a common question that you would expect to receive from, our admissions committee is, if you were to make it to, the interview process, is you already have this, basically equivalent of a master's in business. Why are you seeking out another 2-year business degree essentially, and you already have one? So I think and you can answer that, and if you have a really good answer for that really helps. But just thinking through that way for all of our candidates, really in particular, would really help, be beneficial.
Great, thank you. So it's a holistic admissions process, and one of the questions that's asked as part of that holistic admissions process is your salary history, what your current salary is, what your starting salary was. Why is this asked for? How do you guys look at that number? Yeah.
Definitely. So the salary question is really us just gathering data on those that are applying. It's not, that number is not used in the evaluation process at all. It's just background data that we use just to gauge where people are coming in from the workforce. So do not worry about your salary if it's, if you think it's too low. It's not used for evaluation purposes whatsoever.
Yeah, it's also not used for financial aid. So I know that this question does come up, and it's rightly so confusing. As Evan said, it is for data purposes, but for I want to reiterate that the financial aid process and admissions is completely separate. So it really is a need blind admissions process. And then you don't even apply for aid until after you've been admitted. So it really truly is a completely separate evaluation.
Okay. But so I'm going to add my own twist on this question. Do people, like, for example, if you've got 20 people applying from Apple or from Netflix, is that used sort of as a relative gauge to say, like, oh, this is how much this organization values this employee versus another? Or can it be used perhaps as a proxy to demonstrate, senior rising through the ranks? Or no, it really just is for data collection purposes?
No, yeah. I mean, I think it's used. I can see how someone could view it as, this is like my progression through the company. And so we do want to see that, but I think we'd look more at the title and job responsibilities than we do the salary as that indicator. So it really is just centered on us collecting data for our information.
All right, excellent. So we are coming up on the last couple of questions. So I am going to add this one in because I'm typing it in. So we have a good question here from, how do candidates from the military compete? And I know this is a very specific question, but the military is its own beast in terms of what is seniority in the military and what roles are given out, because for those of us who are civilians, it's a bit of a mystery. So how do you guys evaluate military candidates? Is there anything that you look at in particular for a military candidate versus not, like, if you're looking at 5 different people from the Army or from the Navy, like what sorts of, how do you differentiate between them? Yeah.
I mean, I think for us, the biggest thing is really looking at those transferable skills, because we do believe that, a life in the military is different than civilian life, no doubt about that. But there are a lot of transferable skills that are applicable and can make a lasting impact in your contribution to the classroom and just the larger working force, wherever you go back to once you leave HBS. And so I think having the ability to translate those skills from the military and be able to apply them into the real world, business working life is what we look for in our military applicants. And again, I think that we've seen, like I said, we've seen military applicants for years now, so we really know what we can, really look to and lean on for some skills that are really valuable in the classroom. And so I also tell military applicants that sometimes they struggle with the best way to articulate their skills, and I think sometimes they overthink it. And I think being able to find, a seamless way to translate your experience into experience that we can relate to, and just bringing out those skills, I think, is the most important thing a military applicant can do.
Yeah, I will say our feedback from students and alumni is that having people from the military in the classroom is hugely valuable. So we definitely, we love our military candidates for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. You learn so, because they've had so much leadership experience compared to many of the rest of us. Okay, so final question. Can you talk about the advantages of the case method for learning about business? I know that Harvard is no longer 100% case. You guys are now mixing it up a little, but it is primarily a case school, or it's famous for being a case school. So what to you are some of the biggest advantages of case method for learning?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the ability to learn from your peers, because when you're in the case method, you really are engaging with your fellow students, and the professor is just.
Oh, did he freeze?
I think he might have frozen.
I think he was saying the professor.
No, I mean, it's true. It's an extremely interactive format of learning. You're completely engaged, and you're communicating with people who have different opinions than you. So not only are you learning from your peers, but you're also learning how to communicate and work with people who have different opinions. And I think that's really important. I'll say, luckily for staff, we get to sit in and do some classes sometimes. And I'll also add that it's a really fun way to learn. As somebody whose most of my education was kind of lecture based, it's obviously a twist on that, and it's very fun.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll quickly add, because I thought about this. I was like, why is it that I loved HBS so much and I hated my engineering undergrad so much? And I think part of it is because when you're raising your hand and you're debating against others, you have an emotional commitment to your opinion, right? You're like, you've thought about this opinion. You're really, you wouldn't raise your hand and offer it if you didn't think there was merit to it. And so when somebody either agrees with you or disagrees with you, I think there's a much deeper emotional connection. And that's why I think you remember things. That's why 15 years later, I remember the cranberry case. 15 years later, I remember, all of these different cases because of that. So I'm a huge fan of the case method. And I'm also a huge fan of HBS. And so I would like to really thank Katie and Evan for being here today. This ends this session, but thanks, guys. And join me in a few minutes for the next one. Thanks.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Oh, Evan's back, but he's okay. Bye, Evan. Sorry.